Well, ladies and gentlemen, here we've got Sam, CFC Central. Some of you guys may know him from Twitter. If you don't, you better start following. The link is in the description. We're going to talk about the Chelsea striker situation. I really want to have this conversation with Sam, so let's get on with it.
All right. Here we go, back again on the other side of the coin.
All right, welcome back to the other side of the coin, ladies and gentlemen. Sam, my man, it's so good to see you. I've interacted with you a few times on Twitter. I always see what you're tweeting. It's always very, very intriguing, very interesting, thought-provoking as well. My man, welcome to the other side of the coin. How you doing?
Thank you so much, Miss. I mean, it's been a long time coming, if I can say that. It's been just back and forth with me and you, and so great to interact with you on Twitter. And we had some lovely conversations just before the show started as well. So really, really happy to be here with you and to speak everything Chelsea. I mean, nothing I love more. And if you can find like-minded, amazing people to do it with, then nothing better than that either.
Brilliant. Well said. Ladies and gentlemen, Sam's actually kicked off his channel as well, so do make sure you subscribe to that. I'll have all the link in the description as well. Go check out that once we're done with this particular show. Sam, let's get on with it, because we want to have a very laid-back, chilled conversation about the striker situation. And I want to firstly ask you, before we get into the deeper details about, some of the things that we're seeing, some of the rumors, some of the links and whatnot, let's start from basic. I want to ask you, from your perspective, why do you think predominantly strikers at Chelsea, from your perspective, just doesn't seem to work out for us? I can name so many players. One really sticks out right now is Alvaro Morata in recent times. Tammy Abraham's done well, but for some reason, Thomas Tuchel didn't fancy him. We've had, even a long time ago, Shevchenko, and the name goes on. Two really ones that really stick out for me is obviously Didier Drogba, Diego Costa. Obviously, I think Nicolas Anelka was okay as well. He played as a striker, more as a left-sided forward at times. Jimmy Floyd Hasselbank obviously worked out. That's the other one that I can remember. But from your perspective, Sam, what is it that just doesn't seem to click for our strikers? I mean, we can see what's going on with Lukaku right now as well.
I think in recent times, if you could sit down and sort of analyze the purchases we've made, I think it's predominantly because of how we've done our recruitment. I mean, you look at midfielders who were bought in for Maurizio Sarri, you look at forwards like Havertz and Werner who were bought in for Lampard. And, it's just been a hodgepodge of profiles. So when you're trying to play a certain identity of football, it just becomes very difficult for the team to click, because the moment you're starting to go from defense to midfield, your team changes. And the moment you go from midfield to attack, your team changes. And that's why it's been a little bit clunky, I would use that word. I mean, you can see from Thomas Tuchel's philosophy that he's actually trying to build a very patient, I would say, very meticulous, resourceful kind of side, which does well with the ball. But then you look at Timo Werner or Romelu Lukaku, who are not used to taking touches in front
They're
of
not
defense.
used to this.
Yeah, they're not used to it. I mean, you look at both of them and they've been at their best when they've been running behind defenses, taking, very few touches and making the most out of those touches. I would say that Romelu Lukaku is more similar to a Jamie Vardy than he is to Didier Drogba.
I was just going to say that. I don't know if I've ever mentioned this on Twitter. Timo Werner as well. Like, I remember I spoke to many Chelsea fans before. There were stats earlier on in the season for Leicester. Jamie Vardy, people laughed at Lukaku's 7 touches. There were games where I think Jamie Vardy had about 10 or 11 touches, but some of those touches ended up being goals. So Leicester use him very sparingly, and they use him when they absolutely need him. So I completely understand what you're saying about the Jamie Vardy comparison with Lukaku. I think it can be made for Timo Werner as well.
Yeah, that's a great point, because I was just looking up the stats about a little while ago, and I was just seeing this game against Wolves, and he had, I think, 6 passes in about 80 minutes, and he had 4 shots and he scored twice. So that just says that just says a lot about how he's used. He's He's got players behind him who put him into the right positions. When you look at James Madison, when you look at Harvey
Mm.
Barnes, they're just constantly looking to play him behind, and all
Do you know what,
Vardy does.
Sam? This is
Yeah,
this is their game plan. Like this is
yeah,
actually their game plan. This is not like by chance that Vardy is not getting any of the ball. This is actually what they have trained for. Do you know what I mean?
absolutely, absolutely. I think you're spot on with that. And when you have a system that sort of plays into those
Mm.
forward strengths, I think you make the most out of it. But when I look at our forwards, it's I wouldn't say it's a stretch to say that they're good forwards. They're just not playing to their absolute strengths here. I mean, obviously, if you're
Mm.
going to be made to take touches in tight areas and you start losing
Yeah.
15, 20 touches a game, you're going to be demotivated because this is not what you used to be doing in the Bundesliga or in Serie A. And I mean, obviously, with Lukaku, I would say that 50% of it was down to not putting his head in, not taking enough
Mm.
effort to make it happen. But there was also like a lot of times I looked at him and said, "This is not what he's supposed to do. This is not how he's supposed
Mm.
to play." So I
No,
feel like, yeah, sorry.
no, go on, go on, go on. I want you to because I think you're moving somewhere where I was just going to go. So
I
continue.
was just going to take that to saying that okay, so now that we have, I would say in a sense that we are at a crossroads and we have an opportunity to rebuild this side in
Mm.
Tuchel's image. Now, what does he want to do? Does he want to keep the same kind of forwards and try to make the midfield more equipped to handle transitions? So you have guys like Dembele who are putting in
Mm.
15, 20 crosses a game and trying to get strikers to score. Or are you going to build a midfield very similar to Jorginho, have a possession based midfield and change the forwards? Guys who can take touches, take on people, try to create while they're on the ball, not guys who run behind midfields
Mm.
or defenses and try to score behind them. That is why we've been linked to the kind of forwards that we have. I think that decision will be, key. How do we go from here? Does the midfield change or do the forwards change?
Very, very well said. And this is exactly where I was going to lead on to, because your point initially, Sam, about one of the big reasons, and you're so spot on. The fact that we've been chopping and changing managers from Sarri to Lampard to, in fact, even before Sarri, Conte. Like Conte only
Uh-huh.
stayed for a little while as well. Sarri only stayed for a little while. Lampard only stayed for a little while, and we've now got Tuchel, who's only been about a season and a half. So his time has been a little while as well. So it's not a surprise that we've got chop and changing of styles, of ideology, of players that suit certain styles. So it's a very good point, Sam, that's probably contributing the fact that the strikers don't suit the midfielders or the midfielders don't suit the strikers. Let's now talk about, before we get into some of the links that we're getting linked with the players that we're getting linked with. I want to talk to you about Romelu Lukaku, and I don't want to focus too much on the interview and his attitude and all the shenanigans that's been happening lately. But I do want to ask you, I want to hear from you uh, on this particular matter. You talked about how Thomas Tuchel's come in. Obviously, he's got his ideology and whatnot. Last season, when it finished, obviously it's not totally his team. He had to sort of look at the attributes of the team and kind of find out what best suits majority of the players. But Sam, at the end, when the season finished and summer sort of came about, my question is: was there a re-evaluation of how Thomas Tuchel wants to play? Basically, what I'm trying to get to, Sam, is what was the thought process of getting someone like Romelu Lukaku? Before we even think about, as I said, all the other nonsense stuff that he's been up to the season that just finished. What, in your opinion, what do you think was going through Thomas Tuchel's mind? A lot of people are saying that wasn't his selection. Some people are saying at the end of the day, he still ticked it off. He's the one who sort of said, yep, go and get him. Ultimately, he might not have sort of opted for him as the first choice, but at the end of the day, he still ticked off, signed off, co-signed the particular transfer. So from your perspective, man, what do you think was going through Thomas Tuchel's mind when he got Romelu Lukaku?
I think that there are multiple sort of reasons. There are multiple reasons to sort of look at when we look at Lukaku as a transfer. Now, when we were looking in the summer after the victorious Champions League campaign, it was pretty
Mm,
evident that the one thing that we did not do well was we didn't finish our chances.
Correct.
I think that season when Tuchel took over the Champions League, Werner missed, I think, 21 big chances in the league.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was, and Havertz missed quite a lot too. I think he missed 11 or 12, and both of them had conversion rates, chance conversion rates about around 10% or like 8%, which is abysmal considered
Wow.
when you compare him to say an Erling Haaland, who was finishing them off at like about 35% back then, or a Harry Kane who was putting him away at like 29%. It's a huge gulf, and when you look at the market, there were a couple of forwards available, and Erling Haaland was one of them, and Romelu Lukaku was one of them. I think when you look at his numbers, it is easy to get deceived because he tends to be very clinical with his shots. Whenever he does get shots on target, he tends to score. Even after a pretty bad campaign with us, I mean, he's, I think, marginally overperformed on his expected goals, which means that when he gets chances which are worth scoring, he actually scores them. He doesn't miss many. And it sort of like was a classic case of, yes, this guy is clinical, this guy knows where the goal is, let's get him because we have a side that will have more of the ball, which will create more for him, and we'll see where it goes from there. But the moment you look at Thomas Tuchel's interviews, I mean, there was, I think the first interview he said that, we are missing somebody who's a physical profile, who likes holding the ball up, who can play with his back to goal. That's when slight alarm bells started ringing, because that's not what Lukaku is.
I remember Thomas Tuchel saying we don't have a focal point. He kept on saying that
and
before the season started.
And Inter Milan, with two forwards, in a formation with two forwards, you can't have a focal point. I mean, it's not Lukaku who's getting hit; it's both of the forwards up front. You're looking at Martinez and you're looking at Lukaku, and more often than not, when Inter did win the ball, the first ball that went out was to Hakimi, who was the right wing back. So when you're looking at a focal point, I think we misjudged upstairs somewhere, saying that okay, he's going to be somebody who's going to be holding the ball up. It's in the Premier League when the pressure is cranked up, when there are a lot of there's a lot of defenders coming on to you, and there are multiple centre backs and players willing to commit to you. I think it's hard for a player like that who's not technically proficient to survive in the league. I mean, Antonio Conte, when he got Lukaku into Inter Milan, the first thing he did for the first 3 months, all he did with Lukaku was train his first touch. That is it.
Correct.
And he put him up against a 95-kilo centre back who said, you know what, ram into Lukaku. Every time he tries to get the ball, kick him. And that's all Lukaku did for 3 months. He worked on his first touch. So Conte knew exactly how he wanted to use this guy.
Do you know what? It's a monumental stuff up. Like, for them to think, it feels like they wanted a Giroud type of a player, but with a lot more pace. Because everything that you've just mentioned, I was just sort of thinking, well, it sounds like they probably could have done with Olivier Giroud up front. I mean, are you baffled, Sam, that, as you said, someone upstairs, and that upstairs is probably the scouting team, they did not assess this player? Like, how could you? That is a sackable offense to me. Like, to get something wrong that incredibly, as you've just said, even Inter Milan didn't play that way. They played with a two-striker policy. They knew, as you said, Antonio Conte knew how to deploy him. I mean, are you baffled that Chelsea as an organization, how do you get that kind of, that's a monumental mistake?
It's difficult to call it this, because I would say that, for us, in the gift of hindsight, and to sit back and say, oh, that was like, it was completely wrong. I mean, look at the way Lukaku plays at Belgium, and he plays as he plays as the forward with two wingers on either side, and pretty similar to the way we play. And in that system, he tends to work, but the players make it work. It's not because we are using different tactics. It's Hazard, De Bruyne. These guys know how to play with him, where to play
they know how to utilize him, and it's not just Sam. It's not just Hazard and De Bruyne. It's the midfielders as well.
Midfielders, Tielemans and all these guys. They know exactly how to use them. And when you look at that kind of game, and when you look at Belgium play, you're like, I mean, it could work. When you have guys like Mason Mount running off, when you've got,
I think they play with the three at the back as well, right? They play with three at the back.
They've started playing. Munier and all these guys. They've got wing backs who are also very active in terms of the way they play. So they do play with the three at the back. They've also played with the four at the back. So they do tend to mix it up. But when you look at the front options, I mean, I wouldn't be sort of completely 100% on, yeah, this is not going to work. Because when I look at Belgium, I'm like, this can work. But I also look at Thomas Tuchel, when he's played at Dortmund, and he had guys like Aubameyang, and he had guys like Ramos, a very transition-based side, strikers who played exactly the way he does. I tend to get a little baffled. I'm like, why isn't Tuchel doing that? And the answer is because we don't have the midfield to do it. If you
Correct.
play like Dortmund with N'Golo Kante and Jorginho and Kovacic, you'll get absolutely ripped to shreds, unfortunately. So it's been sort of like I think, an error on all counts. Everybody's messed up a little bit somewhere. And I really think, I still think, if he would have kept his mouth shut, and if there would have been a good preseason for Tuchel to sit down and keep their egos aside and say, okay, forget the last season, I think we
Let's
can
start
make this
again.
work. Let's start again,
Exactly.
and
Let's
we'll
start
get a
again.
good we'll get a good midfielder to sort of like sit down and not worry about where our attacking balls are going, or how quickly we'll be hit on the break, because we have an extra guy sitting back and protecting you. I think
Correct.
there could have been a little bit of a benefit if we had somebody like a Fabinho or a Rodri providing that
Correct.
kind of protection. I think
Correct.
we would have been a little more proactive in terms of playing, but that's where we went wrong. We didn't recruit properly in that department, and that's where we are now.
You know what? It is so well said once again, Sam, man. And it kind of creates a bit of a picture as to, you know, some of our fans, they think, nah, do you know what? Nah, just get rid of him and bring someone else, and it should be fine. No, sometimes it's a lot deeper than that. Like, I was at a
Absolutely.
position where, Sam, you probably would have seen me on online, where just before the season ended, I sort of thought, you know what, let's give this guy another chance. Like, let's just see what we can do. If we can keep him, if we can have a good preseason, if some of our midfielders get to know him and his qualities a little bit more and hit the ball to him quicker, maybe change a few personnels, whether it's in the inside forwards, wings, or in the midfield, just to accommodate his play. Why not? Why not? But do you know what? Let's forget about all of that, Sam. It is what it is. He's made a whole meal of it now. He's very much focused, I believe, to go to Inter Milan. I think Inter Milan wants him as well. Let's now move this to the next level, where we're getting linked with Gabriel Jesus. We're getting linked with Osman Dembele. Osman Dembele is hot, like proper hot. This is, if we don't get him now, I can't see any other suitors at the moment. So hopefully we get him. Gabriel Jesus heating up slowly. Raheem Sterling, I had no idea that this was actually a chance, but looks like it is. Matt Law's reporting. You mentioned that with Thomas Tuchel, he probably just assessed that, okay, with Lukaku, I need a different style of midfield. But maybe now, is he sort of thinking, and look, we may still go out there and get a midfielder, that's fine. But is he more sort of thinking, look, if I'm not able to get every single player in one window, which is quite unreasonable, if I'm being absolutely honest, we need to get CBs. We want to get few forwards. I don't know whether we were really going to get midfielders or not. We may have to do with the ones that we have and then look again in January. Are you sort of thinking now that what you just said previously, that perhaps he's getting forwards that are a lot more sort of will be intertwined with the midfielders that we have right now?
I think that's a fair assessment to make. I think when you look at Gabriel Jesus, and when you look at Raheem Sterling, both of them are comfortable on the ball. They play in a system which is very possession oriented. These guys are excellent at utilizing space, at creating it. Both of them like attacking the box. So in terms of looking at those profiles that we've been linked with, Serge Gnabry also, I mean, one guy also who does really well on either flank. I think you tend to see a pattern in terms of, okay, he is looking at moving Lukaku on and saying, all right, we've got Kai Havertz, we've got these two guys. Let's make a fluid front three and see where we go from there. So I think both of them are pretty good. I think in terms of being linked to those players, they are the right kind of profiles. And the last two times we've taken, B players from Pep, with Pedro and Fabregas, we've done pretty well.
Yeah.
So, I mean, my only concern is that in this side, I see a lot of creative burden being placed on Mason Mount. And when you look at City and the way they have their automations and the way they create openings for players, are we going to be able to use Gabriel Jesus and Raheem Sterling's movements the way that Man City do? I'm not
So
quite
true.
sure. I'm not quite sure. Because
They've
I
got a lot of
both sides,
engineers
and
in Man City, man. They've got Bernardo Silva, they've got KDB, they've got Phil
KDB,
Foden,
Gundogan, everybody so well
Rodri
attuned
as
to
well.
Rodri as well, and I think that also comes with time. I mean, Pep and Klopp both have had a lot more time than Thomas Tuchel
True.
to create this kind of a well-oiled machine, which sort of has its own mind at times. When you play the first pass and everything else falls into place, I think that
So
takes time.
true.
We've also had like 25, 26 injuries this last season, so it
Mm.
will be interesting to see how these two guys fit in. But in terms of profile, I'm actually I'm actually pretty heartened to see that these are the right kind of players we're looking at. I am encouraged by it instead of going after the shiniest toy, which is more often not our transfer
How do
policy in the
you
past few seasons.
how do you feel when you see, in recent times when we've been obviously heavily now linked with these players, when you see certain fans saying, "Why are we after City rejects?" Well, like for me, I find that so strange. Like for me, these two players are not rejects, and I've been saying it in my streams lately and in videos as well that contract negotiations are very complex. Like these
Mhm.
two players are in the final year on their contract. I don't think it's the case where City don't want them. It's because I think these players have other ambitions as well, especially Gabriel Jesus, with Erling Haaland coming in and Julian Alvarez as well. Jesus is probably thinking, I'm good enough to start somewhere, and I'm at an age 25 where I can really now take off. I would still pretty much think if City wanted to keep him, and if he agreed, there could have been a solution that could have been found. But similarly with Raheem Sterling, I think he's looking for a little bit more money, and City's not looking to give that. He's probably looking for a little bit more, regular game time because obviously Man City they rotate their strikers around with the World Cup coming up. I mean, how do you feel when you see this reject word thrown around? I definitely don't think these guys are rejects.
I think it's pretty disrespectful to the ambition and sort of whatever they've achieved. I mean, when you look at Raheem Sterling, to have played at such a young age at Liverpool, then to move to Man City and consistently produce the numbers that he's produced, I think he's an
Mm.
excellent player. But the moment you play the first leg in the quarterfinals of the Champions League against Atletico, and then you're benched for the second leg, then you're benched for the
Mm.
first leg against Real Madrid, then you're benched for the second leg against Real Madrid. For me, that's not a reject. For me, that's somebody who is ambitious enough to say, I should have been starting those games, Pep.
Yeah.
And if I would have started those games, you probably would have been there in the Champions League final. So I feel
Mm.
like it is easy for us to sit down and say, he misses a lot of chances. He's a reject. Pep doesn't like him. But I think in terms of what's not being said is a lot more important. He is showing the
Mm.
ambition to leave a very comfortable spot and being played every
True.
2 weeks, every 3 weeks, to say I'm ready to start every game. I want to play every 3 games in the
Mm.
festive run, and I want to be like the main man. I think that speaks a lot about his ambition. I would actually appraise that instead of rejecting it as if that's something to be like cautious about.
So well said once again, Sam. People, it's so good. This is what I love about the other side of the coin, getting different perspectives. Like people think, oh, he's benched, he must be bad. He's a reject. How about think about that? This guy actually wants to play. He is good enough to play. He wants to play. He's ambitious to play. And what has happened since he's been benched, as you said, it's not like they've blown aside the opposition. Yes, he does miss opportunities, but who doesn't? At least there is, he is a goal scorer. It's not like he misses every opportunity. And I see a lot of upside in both these players. Obviously, Gabriel Jesus being 25, so there is a lot of upside with Sterling as well, 27. I feel like it's prime time. He can hug that sort of far post where he's been getting a lot of goals from Man City, and hopefully someone like Dembele, who is known to be a creative winger, can find him on a regular basis and let's pick up those tap-ins. We've not been scoring tap-ins, Sam, so let's
Yeah.
pick them up. So how do you feel about the Dembele situation? Because I know you're someone who watches Barcelona a lot as well. I've recently started watching since Xavi took over. I
Mhm.
mean, How excited are you about this Dembele, Osman
I,
Dembele?
I
If
think
this
on
happens,
on
what does it
I think
mean?
on a free transfer, I think he's sort of a gold standard, to be very honest. If he can keep his wage demands down, if he can convince him that Thomas Tuchel's the right man. I mean, apparently they both have a pretty great relationship.
Yeah.
If he can put his head down and say that, okay, I will settle for something in the wage structure, for me it's a no-brainer. Somebody who's got the level of creation that he has, the kind of technical elegance on either foot. I mean,
Mm.
he can play on either wing, he can be a false nine, he can play six positions in the front line. I think that's something that is something that we've been missing. The 1v1 threat, for example.
Ooh, yeah.
After Christian Pulisic, after Callum Hudson-Odoi, like the injuries, the form. I don't remember the last time a winger just blitzed past someone, and then I just stood up out of my chair like Azard used to do and say, "Wow!" Like
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
was incredible to watch. But Dembele does that on a daily, at Barcelona. So I think in terms of like I do think after having seen about 20-25 games of his in the past, like this past season, I do think he's going through a purple patch, so expectations will have to
Mm.
be a little more realistic once he signs his contract. But even when he's playing to average, above average, he adds a lot more than the
He's
other guys
better
that we
than
have in
all
the
of
squad.
our, even at average. I think he's better than all of our so-called wingers at the moment who are
Absolutely.
really struggling at the moment to take players 1v1. Just quickly before we go to the Armando Broja situation, to sort of round up this striker talk, are you at all concerned? Because the other thing about Dembele that people are concerned is obviously his injury history. I mean, does
Hmm.
that somewhat bother you knowing that? Because a lot of people have been saying to me, Miz, you know, you're looking at Gabriel Jesus, you're not looking at XYZ players because you think, like, for example, Nkunku. Like a lot of people fans are like, Miz, why not Nkunku? Bring him in. He's creative. He can score goals. And I'm like, I've just been so scarred with Timo Werner. I know he's good. I know he's far more technical, but it's just internally I've been scarred. And some of the goals I've seen Nkunku score, it's reminiscent of how Timo Werner scored. And it
Hmm.
just bothers me from that perspective. And I know I shouldn't be like that. Maybe Nkunku would be different, but and I'm like, they will need adaptation. But when it comes to Osman Dembele, I'm like, nah, he's going to be great. And few fans are like, Miz, that's a bit, contradictory. You're saying Nkunku will take adaptation, but you've got Osman Dembele, who's literally got a plethora of, injury history. How's he going to come to a physical league and survive? I mean, does that bother you one bit, that the history that he has, the baggage that he carries, and he's coming to a physical league? The injuries
Um,
bother you?
I've actually looked at all the factors that were sort of affecting him earlier, and I think they've gone away after he's been married. After he's just like straightened his life up and said, this has changed me for
A
life,
message to all the bachelors out there: get married.
including me. But I was just, I was just looking at everything that was. Just a second. I think I'm getting a call.
Hey, if you want to pick it up, man. I,
Oh,
I
my
can, I
dad's
can.
calling me. Great. Yeah, I just.
You need to pick it up. I can go. You can go mute, pick it up,
No, no,
and I
no,
can carry on.
no. I will definitely call him back. So I was just I'm sorry. The question was regarding Dembele's baggage, right?
Dembele.
So
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, at Barcelona, apparently there were times when they found Chinese takeaways and soft drinks lying inside his room. When he arrived, there was a massive problem with the way that he trained, the way that he ate. He would be up all night playing Fortnite and like PS4 and all these things, and it just
Oh.
there were a lot of things that were going on. But in the past 6-7 months, apparently he's been coming to training early. He's been staying on.
Mm.
When days off, he's been coming and he's been training really, really hard. So I tend to give players the benefit of the doubt. He's worked really hard. He's got his head in the right place, and you have to give people the benefit of the doubt if they're trying to change, if
Do,
they're trying to
do you
get
think
themselves.
Sam? Do you think Sam? Good preparation can prevent, I suppose, further injuries.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, somebody like Dembele who sort of relies so much on explosiveness and change of
Mm.
direction, all these little things, you tend to have a lot of soft muscle injuries. You tend to have a muscle tear here or a ligament injury there. And if you're very careful, if you're very meticulous with the way that you prepare your own body, I think you can prevent it. It's something that we've seen with Christian Pulisic as well.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
somebody who was absolutely lightning quick at Dortmund. You looked at him at Dortmund and you could probably think you could run, 100 meters in record time. He was that quick. But the
Mm-hmm.
more muscle he's put on, the more sort of like a little more of his frame has expanded with age. He's tend to pick up these little injuries everywhere. A muscle injury here and adductor injury there. So I think
Mm.
you have to be very, very careful with how your body changes. Also, you have to be. Sometimes it's out of your hand with like Ruben Loftus-Cheek, who suddenly grew like
Yeah.
half a foot in a year, and he had like massive back spasms because of which he could only play 60 minutes, and he had to do like yoga and an entire regime to get his back on track. And those
Mm.
things sometimes happen, out of your hands. But with Dembele, I think it was something that was in his hands. And then he realized that if I ate better, if I became smarter, then I could prevent
Mm.
injuries, I could play better, I could be faster. And I think we're seeing those benefits.
No, it's another great aspect that we, as football fans, we don't talk too much about outside of football. What is
Yeah.
their lifestyle like?
Mhm.
Are they one of those people after football, party, 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 eat a lot of rubbish, don't sleep well enough, don't train hard enough? Um, there's a reason why players like Cristiano Ronaldo, Messi, Thiago Silva, Zlatan Ibrahimovic, they've last like Zlatan Ibrahimovic has gone to MLS and back to Europe. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, it's incredible how long these players have lasted. So it's all about maintenance, maintaining your body, and what you need to understanding your body as well. So it's very well said. Let's talk a little bit about Armando Broja before we wrap things up. We obviously talked about the striker situation, why it hasn't really clicked for Chelsea, the number 9, the Lukaku situation. We talked about how now we are progressing towards this more fluid sort of front three, which kind of what Thomas Tuchel started with, but then the Lukaku situation sort of deviated away. And now we're sort of coming back to that. Talked about the Dembele situation. Now the one player that I really want to talk about, I want to get your thoughts on this, and one that the fan base are kind of talking about it as well, that sometimes they say to me, Miz, what about Armando Broja? Do you know what I mean? Like, what's going to happen if we bring in all these players? Obviously, we still got Havertz as well, who's either going to be either false 9 or a second striker. I feel like those two are his best spot. I don't necessarily think he's an absolute 9. Where does Armando Broja fit in all of this, in your perspective, Sam? Knowing West Ham's knocking on the door, and in this day and age, these youngsters, they see that other young players are going out there trying to make a living, and they understand that a footballer's life is a short life. If you're a successful player, you can probably play up to 10 to 15 years, and you've got to make all your income, your living during that time frame.
Mhm.
I mean, if someone like West Ham comes in and promises someone like Armando Broja, you're going to start, you're our main guy, you're going to get 70, 80K a week, it's going to be very difficult for someone like Armando Broja to say no. But at the same time, you know, Chelsea will have to do their level best. Like, I feel Chelsea needs to do their level best to keep someone like Armando Broja, because he could possibly one day be that main guy. How do you assess this situation with Armando Broja at the moment in terms of game time? Do you think another loan? Does he stay? Thoughts?
I do not think he's ready. Like after having watched a
Mm,
lot of Southampton games, sort of tracking his performances, especially in the second half of the season, I think he had one
yeah.
goal in 14 games. He wasn't very good, and
Mm,
the main concern was, I mean, if he was at least getting involved in the attack, if he was trying to sort of build certain aspects of his play that were lacking earlier. I really couldn't see that with Southampton,
yeah.
and a lot of it was down to their poor performances as well. Sometimes they were
True.
just like really abysmal. But I do think that he's lacking in several technical aspects. He's much better with the ball than say Timo Werner. But in terms of linking up, in terms of trying to figure out movement in the box, he still is streets away from the player he needs to be. I think he has one or two assists in Southampton and
Yeah.
Vitesse spells combined. So it's very concerning for a centre forward to not be able to create as well as score. And When you have a center forward of that caliber in our system, you've got to be able to do both. And
No,
when you look
you're
at
right.
Gabriel, when you look at Gabriel Jesus, or when you look at Raheem Sterling, both of them can do that. They can create and they can score. And I
I
don't
think
see the
Jesus
same.
last season was 12 goals, 13 assists in all club competitions, something like that.
Yeah,
Very
and
similar sort of numbers.
8 goals, 8 assists, I think, in the league. So
Yep,
that was pretty
yep,
impressive as well. And Sterling had, I think, 12 or 13 goals and 5 assists, if I
something
remember
like
correctly.
that. Yep,
Yeah.
yep.
So I mean, they both do contribute with. I mean, when I look at Armando, he's not got any assists, if I'm correct. He's just like scored really well, but he's just tapered off at the end of the season. I really think we
Mm,
need to find a loan for him in a possession based side where he can build those aspects, where he can play
true.
25, 30 games. He can figure out, okay, when you've got a defense that can exert pressure on the opposition and you're playing predominantly against watertight defenses, against
Mm,
people who are willing to sit down, how do you break defenses? What do you need to do? I think that education needs to be inculcated in him through another loan spell. But if he's going to say that, no, I need to play now or I need to leave, I think then you look at some kind of arrangement with West Ham in terms of like player plus cash and give us Declan Rice. So,
I
so
love how you have to sneak in the Declan Rice situation right there. People know exactly how I feel about Declan
I'm
Rice, but
just
that's
giving
for
them
a
a
bit.
little teaser to think about.
Look, I mean, if that's the case, fair enough. At the end of the day, if Thomas Tuchel wants Declan Rice, seems like he's quite adamant of wanting Declan Rice, and I'm keen to see how he is actually going to deploy him. As much as I don't want to, the way I picture
Mhm.
Chelsea playing, I don't see Declan Rice in that picture. But that's me, right? I can fully appreciate others doing that. And as I said, that's for a different story. But going back to Armando Broja, I agree with you as well, Sam, man. I was following this guy a lot. Obviously, he started off the season really well, and then it tailed off in the latter half. Obviously, Southampton weren't doing good, um, and I was so much buzzing for this player to come back in preseason and really do well. And I was hoping he was going to end the last season in a fantastic fashion as well. And the fact that he didn't, sort of got to a point that maybe you're right. Can you imagine? Just to wrap things up, Sam, like some of the fans want him to be part of the team, want him to either lead the line. Can you imagine when he comes across, like we come across so many teams that want to sit deep at times and have that watertight defense? Someone like Armando Broja not having that experience of how to open those scenarios up. One, it will shell shock him. The pressure, I think, will be too much, astronomical, playing for a club like Chelsea Football Club. And then our fans can be ruthless, Sam, as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think that's something that can be, that can make or break careers. I mean,
Mm.
you need to be very mindful. He's also super young. He's not even anywhere
20.
close. Yeah, he's not even close to his peak. I would say,
Yeah.
somewhere around 26, 27 is when you see forwards come into their own, and
Yeah.
he's still a good 3, 4 years away from it. I really think that getting the proper loan, getting the right kind of loan would help him. And if he's smart enough, he can look at that and say, yeah, I do need to sort of add a little bit of finesse and try to figure out how to best make of my opportunity. Because if he doesn't make the best of it, he's not going to get a second chance. Nobody else does in this team. So
100%.
he either does it now or he never does it. So would he rather go on loan, spend a year and then come back more prepared? I think that's a great way to go.
I absolutely agree. 5-year contract, 1 year down, so he's got 4 more years. I feel like there is no rush, but money can do some madness, Sam. Money can change people's mind, change not just your own, like people around you as well. Because in these days, you're not the only one that's involved in football. There's your agent, there's your family, there's this, there's that. Sometimes a long last, brother that you never knew is all of a sudden in the scene wanting to wants money. So money can do some crazy stuff. Sam, it's been a fantastic conversation. Honestly, loved it. Ladies and gentlemen, hope you guys have enjoyed all of this conversation about the striker situation. I would love to hear, both of us would love to hear what you thought about all the different things that we've brought up in the comment section. Before we go, Sam, let us know a little bit about your YouTube channel and, of course, your Twitter page as well, and your articles. I believe you write a bit of articles for Chelsea as well, like Chelsea stuff, related stuff, not just the other thing that we talked about off air. Which it's up to you if you want to.
That's just between you and me, Miss. That's our own secret, bro.
That's our own secret. That's our own secret. But yeah, do you want to let the fans know about your socials? Because I want people to know you, man. I really do.
Yeah, so thank you so much. First of all, Miss, it's been an absolute pleasure. I mean, you're a great guy, and I've been following you for a bit. Even with my old account before that one got sort of like suspended for trying to do threads, I was following you on there as well, and following everything that you do. And to see, I would technically call you a desi creator because you are a desi creator. To see like a desi creator go and absolutely absolutely go out there and smash it, I think has been an incredible experience for me, like somebody to look up to and say, so God bless you, and you're doing a great job, and long may this continue. So
thank you.
Yeah, and in terms of like my profile, I think the best way to follow me is on CFC Central 3 on Twitter. That's my Twitter handle, CFC Central 3. My YouTube channel is running a little bit behind. I am still working on a Jules Koundé video, so I think it's sort of like one of those times when you gift an iPhone to your dad and he can't figure out what exactly is going on. It's the same thing with like me editing my videos. I'm just trying to figure out what exactly is going on. So I'm just like playing around with it,
Let me give you an advice, Sam.
Yeah.
You will never get it right the first time. So, and I don't even think anyone has ever got even after their 50th, 100th time. So it's all about learning and trial and error, man. So just put that video up, the first one, and you will notice as
that's the thing. It's usually errors. There's not trials, unfortunately. It's just whenever I hear my voiceovers, I don't know why I sound like I'm on helium, so I have to sit down and like take a second voiceover. I'm like, God damn it, this has to be better. So it's just been a fun experience for me to sit down and learn these things by myself. But hopefully, like in a couple of days, the Jules Koundé video will be out, and then I'll be able to sort of start off with my YouTube thing as well. But yeah, that's about it. I think Twitter would be the best place to follow me. I tend to do my threads, my articles over there. So yeah.
Brilliant. Sam, do let me know when that channel is up and running, and the first video when it's out. I would love to plug it in my channel in the community page so you can get a lot of traction. So my viewers get to see what you're up to as well. Hopefully some of my viewers become your viewers as well down the track. So ladies and gentlemen, hope you guys have enjoyed this. Smash the like button. If you're here for the first time, subscribe. We're very close to 13,000. Let's get there ASAP. And today you could possibly get a 3 upload because the weekend's just around the corner and I love mingling with you guys. So we're probably going to have a live. We're going to have this as a premiere. We're going to have a video later on. You're going to indulge. Until next time. See ya.